So the words deny, defend, and depose etched in Sharpie on bullet casings recovered outside the Midtown Hilton after the deadly shooting on Wednesday morning. United Healthcare's CEO Brian Thompson have focused the attention on the threats faced by professionals in all levels of the health insurance industry. And today, several major companies, CVS being one of them, have removed their C-suite profiles, the profiles and pictures of their C-suite. Companies are really concerned on the heels of what happened on Wednesday and are concerned that this could elicit copycat killers. And across social media, I saw posts that referenced that said, one down, more to go. And as I scroll through social media with regard to the story about United Healthcare's CEO being gunned down, it surprises me how vitriol it has become. Social media unleashed a barrage of caustic commentary about his death in lieu of condolences. You'd think there's some condolences, but it was interesting to me that Americans from all walks of life shared barbed jokes, memes, funny memes, and personal anecdotes about their own experiences with giant insurers like United Healthcare. United Healthcare had posted a statement on their Facebook page on Wednesday, and they ended up having to take it down or removing it from being public because it quickly elicited 46,000 reactions on their Facebook page. 41,000 of those 46,000 employed the laughing emoji. The company quickly turned off comments on the post, but hundreds of users still had shared that because they had screenshots of it. And many of the posts I've seen across social media were very similar, rejoicing and gunning down of this guy. And as I walked through my business office today and yesterday talking to folks about this story, the one thing that resonated about this was how many people had said the bad guy, the enemy here is health insurance companies. I heard prior authorizations. I heard denial for service. I read people who had loved ones die because of lack of service. And it made me wonder, does this impact you? Have you had that happen? I'd love to hear from you, our listeners. Have you gotten screwed by an insurance company? Have you experienced it yourself, whether it be you or a loved one? And has it cost a life? Is it that vitriol? Is it that real? I know this, that when I see that much media attention in social media and the underworld, comments like this, with the majority of them very negative, it tells me there's a bigger problem. And this is like a big onion. It's going to get unpeeled and it's not going to go away. And the deeper we go into it, it's going to be stinky. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Kroc, my phone number is 800-288-9227. So pick up a phone and call me like Mike from Dallas, 800-288-9227. Mike, thanks for holding on for a while through a couple breaks. Appreciate you holding. You're on with Westside Jeff.
Sure. Hi. So I'm actually a law professor, and one of the areas I teach is the law surrounding benefit denial. And I'm here with some good news, some very positive news. So let me talk a little bit about this and why there's a lot of misunderstanding. So let's say you have a benefit that's denied, a medical benefit. That's not the end of the story. You can sue an insurance company immediately in federal court. What a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of lawyers don't understand, is the name of the law that you have to sue under. It was passed in the early 1970s, and it's called the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA. And it happens to deal with denial of medical benefits. So just because the insurance company says, you're out of luck, I deny the benefit, we deny the benefit, you still can go immediately to federal court. Here's the second thing a lot of lawyers don't understand, a lot of people don't understand. We're in Texas. Texas has a special law that is shared by with 20 or 21 other states. Here's what that special law says. Insurance company decisions will not be deferred to. In other words, just because an insurance company makes a decision, it's not going to have any what's called precedent in the federal court. The federal judge will decide, based on the terms of the policy and the facts presented, whether you get the benefit or you don't get the benefit. And it just frustrates me sometimes that lawyers don't know this, but it's a very powerful law. And here in Texas, we're especially privileged because insurance companies don't get a leg up if you go to federal court. And that's sort of, in a nutshell, what I wanted to just deliver to you and to your audience.
Mike, you sound like you know what you're talking about. You're a professor of this. Where do you teach, if I can ask?
Sure, I teach. We talked before on the First Amendment. I teach at the University of North Texas College of Law.
I remember talking to you before. I'd like to send me an email with your contact info, if you would. I'd like to connect with you. My email is westsidejeff610 at gmail.com, westsidejeff610 at gmail.com. You just gave me a couple great tips. Let me ask you this. For those listening to us who are calling with these kinds of complaints, what advice would you give them? You mentioned this law. All I could think about initially is if I'm that guy that doesn't have great insurance and I'm getting rejected from it, I certainly don't have the money to go hire an attorney and pay thousands of dollars to represent me on that. How do you get around that?
So here's the nice thing about the law is that if your lawyer prevails, if your lawyer wins at the trial, the lawyer gets his or her attorney's fees 100% reimbursed. So you can hire a lawyer. The lawyer can take it on the agreement that they may not get anything. But if they win, they get all of their costs back, all of their attorney's fees. And a lot of lawyers don't know that. So that's a huge incentive for lawyers to take these kinds of cases.
Cases they can win. Every state has a bar, and usually every city or every community has a bar. Is there a bar you recommend that if somebody needs an attorney, they could go to the Texas bar, the Dallas bar, the North Texas bar, and search attorneys who might be worth the conversation for something like this?
I would recommend this, Jeff. I would go to the internet and I would look for board-certified labor and employment lawyers. Board-certified labor and employment lawyers who specialize in representing employees. And often they will handle these kinds of cases. And that's the best source to go to immediately.
Board-certified labor and employment attorneys, right?
That's correct.
Interesting. Mike, I appreciate you calling. Thank you for listening, and shoot me an email. I want to connect with you off air a little bit about some of these things and may refer to you again somewhere along the way. Thank you for calling. I appreciate it very much. JJ from Dallas, you're on with Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM.
Hey, Westside Jeff. Nice talking to you tonight. I'm a physician. I'm going to approach my contribution from two sides. As a board-certified physician practicing in Dallas, and also from the point of view of a family member who has gone through stuff with insurance. But first of all, so what usually happens is we physicians, I practice independently. So I'm credentialed with several insurance panels like UHC, Blue Cross, and the patient comes to the hospital. They get pre-authorized by the UR department. That's utilization review. They talk to the insurance and they say, this patient needs treatment. Insurance says, go ahead and treat. So we treat. But what I have found over a decade of doing this is the fact that UHC in particular will turn around weeks later after you've submitted the bill to them as a physician. The claim, exactly. So they turn around and say, oh, wait a minute. I'm just paraphrasing now. We need all the records of what you did for that patient. Okay. So we'll send them. Don't forget this takes weeks. So we'll send them, and they turn around to say, oh, well, we looked at those bills, and we looked at the records that you provided. We're not going to pay. Or we'll pay 1/3 of what we agreed to pay in the first place. So this happens with UHC in particular. So I'm not very shocked about what happened.
So doctors are getting screwed from it too.
Oh, absolutely.
In some cases.
I have friends. We were talking about this before this happened, that we're not going to be taking this insurance, this particular one, because they actually have other smaller companies that they created to specifically deal with physician denial in this funny way. They're not going to say the patient shouldn't go to the hospital. No, they're not going to deny the patient going to the hospital for treatment because they know it's egregious to do that. So,
JJ, thank you for listening and thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion. I got to hit a break real quick. So thank you for weighing in. I appreciate being a physician and offering your opinion. That's what I want. I want different perspectives on the news of the death of the CEO of UHC and all the vitriol across social media about people complaining about prior authorizations and health insurance providers. And this is a bigger story. And I want to hear your perspective on this as it relates to you and your lifestyle and your family. 800-288-9227 is my phone number. Got to hit a quick break. 3.5 minutes from now, we'll continue the conversation. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. It's a hot topic we're talking about, and that is the assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare on Wednesday. And to me, this story is the plethora of social media posts that rejoice in his murder and how angry people are at United Healthcare. We just took a call from a doctor, JJ, that said within his circles of the medical community, many doctors don't like United Healthcare because they never get paid for it. They have authorizations to do the work and things are approved, but then United Healthcare comes back afterwards and says, oh, we're not going to pay you for it, or we're only going to pay a third of it. Interesting. We took a call moments ago from Mike in Dallas. He's a law professor who had a couple recommendations. He said there is something called the Employee Retirement, I couldn't write it real quickly, ERSA Act that protects people in Texas. And he said in Texas especially, there's a special law that insurance companies' decisions will not be referred to, and board certified labor employment attorneys is what he recommended that you could employ for that. It's an interesting conversation. The anger towards insurance companies. If you've been screwed by an insurance company, if your loved one has, it's amazing how many stories I've seen across social media that said a loved one died because they were not, they were denied service or medical care for a condition that ended up killing them and didn't extend their life. Pretty interesting story. I'd love to hear from you. Are you one of those? How's that impacted you? And especially if you're in health insurance, if you're in the insurance industry, if you're in medical care, I want to hear your perspective on the story. This is an onion. It's a stinky story. It's not going to go away. It's got shelf life. It'll be around for a while because there's a lot of elements to it, and we'll continue talking about it. My name's Jeff, Westside Jeff, and you can call me like Eugene from Fort Worth. My number is 800-288-9227. Eugene, thanks for calling, and thanks for standing on hold for a few minutes. What's your thought?
My thought is this. I'm sure a lot of people have questions about what health insurance companies do, but radio shows and TV shows that are voicing these concerns, the guy has not even had a funeral yet. They haven't caught his killer. To me, it invites copycats. What if you don't like the way tow truck companies work with apartment complexes? Do you go and kill a driver so that a radio show can have everybody talk about their beefs on that? Or what if President Trump had gotten shot and killed? Would that give radio shows, liberal radio shows, the right to have people call in and vent that maybe he got what he deserved? I just don't think the death of somebody is a good venting point for that.
Eugene, I appreciate your call, and I agree with you. One of my concerns I stated earlier is there once was a time, excuse me, in this country, I'll never forget, after Columbine, the shooting in a school, and then Newtown was one of those that it just stopped me in my tracks. And I just remember being numb watching the events of that and thinking how horrific that is, that a place in our lives and society that we perceive are safe places are no longer safe. And we know that's created copycat events like that, obviously. And that's my concern about this, that somebody took something in their own hands and it took the life of a CEO of a company, a very big publicly held company that is in the insurance industry that impacts all of us, health insurance, because we all have it or need it. And I hope this doesn't normalize that. I hope this doesn't create the copycats. I hope this doesn't validate more of that, not just in that industry of health insurance, but other CEOs. I agree with you. It's one of my concerns about that. Thank you for calling. Justin from Stephenville, thank you for calling. I appreciate your listening and hanging on through the break. You're on with Westside Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. So I just wanted to say real quick, so the one man that made the reference to calling it or filing the federal lawsuit, just as a normal person with a normal job, in my situation, in my case, there's no time for filing something like that. I mean, you're for my situation, we're talking cancer. And I just felt like the whole medical system, not just insurance, I felt like the medical system wanted my loved one to just pretty much go away. I felt like it was financially in everyone's best interest for them not to be around anymore. I mean, it was already costing a fortune. And so I think we keep saying failure to pay or being denied. I think it's just lashing out at the medical industry altogether, because they just it's what is it, minimal care. That's what I saw, minimal care and delayed care until someone passed away is what I saw. And I can certainly relate to anyone that would be upset when someone that they care for very deeply, you sit there and you watch them and you're saying, please, can we do this or can we do that? And you just keep getting the runaround. And so I do understand. I relate to the people lashing out. Now, I would never wish ill will. I don't know why those people are saying things like that, but I can understand people being very upset for whatever their circumstance may be. So,
Justin, thank you for listening. I appreciate you calling the show and voicing your opinion. You reiterate a lot of what I've read online. A large number of people who said they can understand what the country's going through right now with regard to this, and agree with what you're saying. So thank you. 800-288-9227 is my number. I'd love to hear from you on your perspective of the shooting of the CEO of United Healthcare and the anger towards health insurance providers and the medical community with regard to care. If it's impacted you, I'd love to hear your story. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So the name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can catch me across social media, Facebook, Insta, and X at Westside Jeff. And the story out of Wednesday about the assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare has elicited a conversation that's really a nationwide conversation about the role of health insurance and how it impacts what we do. A friend of mine, Josh, a little while ago just posted, I saw this on my wall, it said, how many people who are desperate and left with no choice but to depend on United Healthcare and were denied or delayed life-saving procedures and treatments ordered by their personal doctors, even though they never missed a single premium payment for years. Goes on to say there's a difference in condoning and encouraging someone to act out in murder, which I soundly reject, period. And then there is understanding how corrupt and disgusting the U.S. healthcare system is, and being able to comprehend why someone would do that to the biggest healthcare insurance CEO in the country. Goes on to say $75 for a couple of Tylenol in the ER. F off. We are at a breaking point. The middle class can't take this any longer. If that makes me a bad person for pointing it out, so be it. It's all systematic scam, and the little people have had enough. A response to his post from a person that said, I haven't shed one tear for this greedy effer, and I don't care that he has kids or a family. He destroyed thousands of families through his greed and evilness. F him. That seems to be the tone of some of the vile and vitriol comments I see on social media about the events of Wednesday. And my opinion is what happened Wednesday is going to open up a national conversation about health accessibility, health care, health insurance, and how the system works. And I think done well and done right, it could be a very good, healthy conversation. I'm sure government will have to be a part of that naturally because of regulations. But unfortunately, we're in the middle of a transition of government, and it's going to take some time for that to happen. But it's going to be interesting to see how this story evolves and how it impacts what the future of health insurance in this country looks like. Because I think this is a groundbreaking moment that's going to impact our lives, our health insurance providers in the industry as a whole. I really think this is going to be a groundbreaking moment that we'll look back on and say, much like the Rodney King story, much like the George Floyd story, much like the Harvey Weinstein story, those stories had significant impacts on culture. I think this one will too. That's how big this story is. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and I started off earlier by asking the question is, have you been screwed by an insurer? Have you been screwed by an insurance company from a health perspective that's impacted you, your life, a loved one's life? I'd like to hear your story. 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Tracy from Plano, you've been on hold for a while. I appreciate you holding and sticking with me through the break. Thank you for taking the time to listen. What's your thought on this? Tracy, you there? I don't hear you. Don't hear Tracy. Garrett, I can't hear her. Tracy, if you could check that again. Tracy, you there? All right, we're going to put you on hold and try to get back to you in a minute. Again, this United Healthcare story is compelling to me because there's a lot of layers to this onion. One of them is a CEO who, by all accounts, was a $10 or $15 million a year guy, was gunned down on the streets of New York. And you got to realize they haven't identified the suspect yet, and they think as of just an hour or two ago that the suspect may have left the state of New York. How does a person evade the most visible city in the world where there are cameras everywhere to track your every movement? That's an interesting element to this story. It's interesting that many are angry at United Healthcare because people see it as greed, and greed that has cost lives on the backs of our listeners' lifestyles. And if you're one of those that's been impacted, I'd love to hear that story. 800-288-9227. My name is Jeff, Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock. I've never had that experience. I'm 64 years old, pretty healthy, never, believe it or not, never had stitches, never had surgery. The closest I've been to significant healthcare problem was at the age of 18. Living at home with mom and dad. I was going into my senior year of high school, and that was a very different era in 1978 than it is in 2024. But I came down with pneumonia, had a fever that was persistent, not going away. And about 6-7 days into it, it was spiking up to 105. And my mom, as she used to call herself, was a flunk out nurse. And my sister was a nurse at the time. I remember a Sunday morning at about 7:30, them getting me out of bed. And I, run 100 degree temperature for a long time, for a week, and then it spiking at 105 on a Sunday morning. I don't remember a lot of what happened because I wasn't very aware of things, but they put me in a bathtub in my home I grew up in, of what they called lukewarm water. I swear I felt like I was sitting in a bucket of ice, and I was shivering, and they poured alcohol in there also, rubbing alcohol, and the intent was to try to get my fever down. It wasn't going down, so my mom and my sister helped me get out of the tub, dry me off, put clothes on me, put me in the car, and drove me down to the hospital. And I was in the hospital for a week and a half in ICU, and after it was all said and done, it ended up being pneumonia, viral pneumonia, or bacterial pneumonia, I believe it was. And the doctor said afterwards, he thought there was a point in time they were going to lose me. I don't remember much of that. I was well medicated, but I don't recall ever having any problems with insurance and payment afterwards either. But that's as close as I've had to real medical scares for me. But I hear your frustration about this with some of you, and I'd love to hear more stories. I think this story has a long shelf life. I think this is a story we will talk about for some time, and the story we will talk about for some time won't be just the killing of a CEO, although that's part of the story. I think the story that will be talked about is the anger in this country towards health insurance providers and the health insurance community about denial for service and holding it up and it impacting people's lives. That's what I've seen all over social media. And when I see the story that United Healthcare posted it on social media about their CEO being killed, and that story on Facebook having 46,000 reactions to that on Facebook, 41,000 of those reactions, which employed a laughing emoji or positive comments about it, that caught my eye, that caught my ear, and tells me there's a bigger problem, and this is a bigger story than just the death of a CEO. Again, if you've been impacted, if you've been screwed by an insurance company, I'd like to hear your story. If you work in the insurance company industry, if you work in the healthcare provider industry, and you've seen these kinds of injustices, I'd like to hear the story. And what I'd like to hear is not only the story, but what recommendations would you have? How do you fix that? Because this is going to hit the front burner for a while. 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP is the number. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Crock on News Talk, 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. It's a fascinating story that I think is going to have a lengthy shelf life. The assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare, not just because it's a murder mystery, but because of what it represents. And what it represents is anger towards health insurance providers and the medical industry for the red tape, the expense. We have great health care in this country. We really do. I mean, I think about that often. Would I want to live in another country and have to go to the hospital or a clinic in those countries? And I can't think of one I would. So I think we have very fortunate that we have great providers. But I think it's not the provider itself as much as the back end of the expense and the association of how we pay for it and fund that is the problem. This is a story that's going to last for a long time and a lot of layers to it. And there's a lot of anger and vitriol towards that industry that I think we're going to hear, especially post-election as we move into a new administration. And I think you'll see Congress deal with this as time goes. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Love to hear your opinion, your thoughts, your how it's impacted you at 800-288-9227. Richard from Texarkana, thank you for holding. You're on with Westside Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call. I called in because I heard your request for call-ins, and I actually work inside the insurance company. I'm an RN. Case manager, and so but I agree with you. I think we really do have one of the greatest healthcare in the country, and we have great providers, like you say, but having worked in the hospital, having worked post-acute or like in home health or an area outside of the acute care system, and now an insurance company, I have noticed that really, you had said in your comment, it goes at the darker side or is beyond the provider, but I've seen where the provider or the hospital systems are greedy too, in a sense. So the system isn't perfect, but like Canada, for example, my sister lived in Canada, and she had to wait for a surgery on her ankle to have a cyst removed. Her daughter couldn't get her ear tubes out, just basic elective surgery that you can't just go have with the provider you want. And so I think it's tragic what happened with this CEO. And, I think it shouldn't be celebrated. Cold-blooded murder, whatever he did, didn't deserve, 3 shots in the back. I mean, it's appalling to see where we're at. But I understand, having had a brother that lost to brain cancer, the frustration of that broken system, and how do we make it better? That's the question that we need to wrestle with as a country and come together and fix without going single payer.
That's a good one, Richard. Thank you for calling, and I think you're right. And this story is going to continue, and that's going to be a topic of conversation for some time. I appreciate your call. John from Fort Worth, you're on with Westside Jeff on WBAP.
Hey, Westside Jeff. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to echo some of the things you've been talking about. I'm a spinal surgeon in Fort Worth, and it takes me sometimes weeks and months to get a surgery approved for a patient. And these patients are in a lot of pain. They have leg pain, they have back pain, they've failed all kinds of treatments, and now they're looking at surgery. And these patients have to wait months and months and months sometimes for me to get their surgeries approved. And not only that, but after I get them approved, then they can still deny it by having a second opinion doctor that the insurance company pays for to come up with whatever reason that they can come up with to deny the surgery. So then I have to peel it all over again. And then once I finally do the surgery, I never get paid. And it takes me months and months to get paid, and I have to pay people to try to appeal the insurance companies to get reimbursed for the surgeries that I even do.
John, from a surgeon perspective, what one thing would you like to see changed or done that would help improve the situation for you?
I think that the insurance companies having the ability to hire mostly retired physicians to overlook requests for any not just surgeries, but I'm talking about MRIs, X-rays, injections, medicines even.
Sure.
And so that they should have an independent group of physicians that are dedicated to the practice of medicine and not to the practice of saving money for the insurance companies. I mean, a truly independent, more or less honest body of doctors who would be like, say, because there is abuse in the system. There's no doubt. People are getting surgeries that shouldn't have surgeries. And so from that perspective, the insurance companies do have a policing obligation. But I think that if there was an independent group that had no money in the game, and then to decide if this treatment should be done or that treatment should be done or this surgery should be done, or at least have input, that might be a more fair peer review kind of situation.
John, do you think we can really get to an era where we can have an independent review of that? Do you think it's really is it a dream, or is it really something viable?
I think it's a dream, truthfully, because I'll tell you, I just had a
too many entities, right?
Yes, I had a surgery. I put in for a surgery, I had a peer review doctor that, it was a spine surgeon. He was actually a real peer. He wasn't like an OBGYN or internal medicine doctor. It was actually a real spine surgeon that looked at my request for spinal surgery, and he agreed with me completely. And he submitted that to the insurance company, and they still denied it.
Wow.
And
John, thank you for
suffering. These patients are suffering.
Yeah, they are. Well, thank you for calling, and thank you for...
The other side of that is the narcotics. Now, if they're waiting, they're taking narcotics, and then there's a big push on people not being able to get their narcotics now.
That's a real problem. I know that. John, thank you for listening, and thank you for calling. I appreciate it. The good news about this story is I don't see it going away. I think this story has a long shelf life, and there's a lot of angles to it and a lot of sides to it. And the one common thread, which is interesting tonight, there wasn't any one person that called me and told me they're happy with this system. I talked to several doctors. I talked to several folks within insurance providers. I talked to employers. I talked to patients. And every one of them said this system is broken. Isn't that interesting? That's why the story's not going away. That's why we'll continue talking about it. My name is Jeff Westside Jeff.